What are you seeing as the new wisdom tradition, not just in terms of a map, but in terms of structures? Or do you see this as something that the individual now, because we're at a different stage of development, that we're going to be able to navigate it with our own hands firmly on the steering wheel? Or to a certain degree, we're going to have to find some larger structure or the guru model, some new version of that? What do you see as what's going to give us that strong structure and path to...
Well, one thing is almost certain, and that is, although exceptions abound, the individual self cannot engineer his or her own awakening or enlightenment. And that is for the reasons that you laid out and many, many more. The ego as a self-contraction, and there is the ego as the functional finite self-sense, and that's fine. That's supposed to stay there and remain. But identity with that finite self, that finite ego, gives us a self-contraction, gives us a separate self-sense. And the identity with that finite self is done by and produces all of the things that are actually against enlightenment. It's an identity that is bound to space and time, unlike the true self, which transcends space and time. And the finite ego is an identity that's bound to what Alan Watts called the skin-encapsulated ego. And it's a fundamental identity just with this organism, and not with that which is the ground of all being, and that an identity that is one with everything that's arising, moment to moment to moment, so that you feel that your real identity with the egoic sense, your identity feels like it's located someplace behind your eyes, someplace behind and between the eyes, the eyebrows, someplace sort of back there. You're on this side of your face looking at the world out there.
Right.
And that's how you feel yourself. And that is essentially what the self contraction is. That's what the separate self is. But the awakening to the true self or the real self, you are not on this side of your face looking at the world out there. You simply are the world out there. You are one with everything that you're aware of, in addition to being aware of your own finite conventional self. But it's this shift to an awareness with everything. It's a shift to an awareness with everything that's arising is what also brings a liberation from suffering, and liberation from craving, liberation from fear, because when you're one with everything, there's no longer anything that you crave, because there's nothing outside of you that you could crave. You are deeply, deeply satisfied, but it's just this complete feeling of absolute fullness. And so there's no longer fear connected with that. There's no longer craving or desire connected with that. It is a deep release from the contracted, desiring, grasping, addicted self that is the small, separate, finite ego. And so the small, separate, finite ego is not generally speaking, going to have the willpower or the desire to overcome all of these factors that are the actual basis of its own being. It doesn't have enough awareness to overcome the finite, limited awareness that is its very nature. It doesn't have enough will to overcome the limited willpower of its own isolated body-mind to transcend its own body-mind.